السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله الحمد لله الذي جعل ذكره طمأنينة للقلوب وجلاء لها عن رين الذنوب ومطرة لوسواس الخناس المكذوب، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد الداعي إلى كل فعل محبوب وأمر مطلوب، وعلى آله وأصحابه المقتفين سبيله على خير أسلوب. أما بعد، فيقول رب تبارك وتعالى في كتابه المنزل: أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم، بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا ادخلوا في السلم كافة ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين. وقال تعالى: والذين يقولون ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا والذين يقولون ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين وجعلنا للمتقين إماما. Allah says, O ye who believe, O ye who have believed, enter into Islam wholeheartedly, completely, and do not follow the footsteps of Satan. Indeed, he is to you an avowed enemy. Brothers and sisters, last week we spoke about the third modality of communication between parents and children, which is language. And we spoke about how amazing it is that instructions for this language, for the mode of speech to young children, are written directly into the hearts of parents by the mercy of Allah. أنزل في الدنيا رحمة واحدة. From that one mercy, the miracle of that mercy is that it writes the language. This language we now know as Motherese, child-directed speech, the language of compassion. Parents all over the world, when speaking to children, change the way they speak, the words they use, and the sentence structure, the tone, the pitch. Everything changes all automatically to express endearment and intimacy and affection. With whatever they say, it has endearment in it. We also spoke about the various devices that are employed to convey this endearment, with focus on the diminutive, the word as in baby, and the E sound, which is also found in Arabic, as in Ya Bunay. I gave you the example of the people of the Amazon jungle, where they were able to understand the intention of mothers speaking English to their children, even though that they did not know a word of English. The language of compassion, therefore, is universally understood, and as parents, we should endeavor to use and to continue to use compassionate language beyond the infancy of our children. And the entire spectrum of age is covered in Islam with responsibility and guidance, which we not only in the infancy, for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, ليس منا من لم يرحم صغيرنا. ليس منا من لم يرحم صغيرنا. That he should not consider himself from among my follower, from among me. ليس منا. He's not one of us. The one who does not show mercy to the young, and ويعرف شرف كبيرنا. And he does not acknowledge the honor due to elders. The language of compassion is found in the speech of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We reflected on the sense of love and affection in his use of the word ummati, both in his dua for us in this world and on the day of judgment. And that his mercy, his compassion, his love, his care, his kindness, and his affection all flows from the mercy of Allah, the mercy and compassion of Allah, who he himself also uses when speaking to the believers compassionate language. We saw in the same devices using the same device of belonging and affection. نبئ عبادي أني أنا الغفور الرحيم. Tell my servants, inform my servants that I am the forgiving, the merciful. وإذا سألك عبادي عني فإني قريب. That when my servants ask you of me, so I am very close. Now, after dealing with the four characteristics of humility, gratitude, responsibility, and compassion that are necessary for inoculating our children from this disease of narcissism, I want to address another issue that is affecting our children in the modern world today. Narcissism, of course, as you know, has increased to epidemic proportions in the last 4 decades. But there are other diseases that are much older, that has deeper roots and wider spread of infection. And they have also intensified in the last 40 years, last 30, 40 years. And one of those is a key factor in the breakdown of parent-child relationships in the modern world. And it causes young people to drift from the values and the morals of their parents. And this problem is rooted in the 18th century. It's an old problem. It has deep roots. But before I go into details of that, I want to first refresh our minds with 2 points. And the first is the plan of Shaitan for the children of Adam alayhi salam. In the Quran, Allah tells us very clearly that when Shaitan refused to bow in respect, when he refused to show respect to Adam alayhi salam, because this was sajdat al-takreem, it was a prostration of honor, of respect. When he refused to do that and was condemned for eternity, one of the things he said very confidently, he said that he will do was that he will destroy the life of most of the children of Adam alayhi salam. Allah tells us, says, قَالَ أَرَأَيْتَكَ هَذَا الَّذِي كَرَّمْتَ عَلَيَّ, that do you see this one that you have honored above me? لَإِنْ أَخَّرْتَنِي إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ, that if you leave me to live, to give me respite until the day of judgment, لَأَحْتَنِكَنَّ ذُرِّيَّتَهُ إِلَّا قَلِيلٌ, that I will surely destroy his descendants, except a few. And the word he used is لَأَحْتَنِكَنَّ. Hanak is usually the palate, but is also used to describe the beak of the crow, the beak of an animal. In order, it's about putting a rein or to putting a ring through the nose. You know, it's putting أصبت حنكها أي باللجام أو بالرسم. It's putting a ring through the nose, which you hold a bull with, you know, like a bull ring, or a rein around you, control you. There's some sort of thing that he planned to control them, and it was in this area, focused on and hanak, the mouth, that area. That's the metaphor, but there is deep meaning in it. Shaitan is well aware of the dire consequences and pain in the heart of parents when children behave in a disrespectful manner. He knows that if there's a breakdown in the parent-child relationship, then calamities of all sorts are likely to cascade into the life of the child, even before they are punished on the day of judgment, as we know. كل الذنوب, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, كل الذنوب يؤخره الله ما شاء منها إلى يوم القيامة إلا عقوق الوالدين. That all the punishments that Allah may delay for all the sins to the next life as much as He wishes, but إلا عقوق الوالدين, except the punishment for the hurting of the heart, for being unkind, for being disobedient and horrible to parents. The punishment for that is فإن الله تعالى يعجله بصاحبه في الحياة قبل الممات. That Allah brings forth the punishment, hastens the punishment for that disobedience, for that pain in this life, before death, قبل الممات. So that's the first point we have to keep in mind. Now, the second point I want you to bear in mind is in relation to this, the concept of reason and reasoning. This is an essential part of Islamic teaching. The use of one's faculty of discernment is an indispensable part of Islamic teachings. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala calls upon the believers repeatedly in the Quran to ponder, to think, to reason. أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ فَاقْصُصِ الْقَصَصَ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. So relate to the stories, so perhaps they may give thought, they may use their power of intellect and discernment to think about things. وَمَنْ نُعَمِّرْهُ نُنَكِّسْهُ فِي الْخَلْقِ أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ. And to whom we grant long life, we reverse the creation. So will they not understand? أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Do they not use their intellect? So here, there is no inherent clash between the command to use the intellect and side by side the following of the guidance, because the two work are together. As long as there is a recognition of the limitations of the human intellect, there is no problem with it. We have no problem that, as it is usually portrayed by some who fail to understand both Islam and the concept of reason. But now the problem we face today is that it is of something rather strange, and that has become attached to the idea of thinking with reason. And that is at the heart of this collapse between parent-child relations in the modern world. Now, we all know anecdotally of this collapse, of these cases. We all are familiar. We all either know of a case directly or know of someone who has suffered from this. Every so often, I get a call from a distraught parent who says, subhanallah, they're pulling their hair out, saying, I don't know what's happened to my son, or I don't know what's happened to my daughter, but they've suddenly said that they do not want us to give them any advice, and they're not interested in our religion, and they themselves will decide what is right and wrong. In other words, the child is saying, leave me alone to do my own thing. I do not have to follow you or advice from you. But of course, do continue to pay my smartphone bills and etc. But yeah, so this is the problem, and as you can imagine, this usually leads to it lead to a major upheaval and turmoil in the relationship, often resulting in full-scale rebellion and delinquency. Now, this is not only anecdotal, though we all know about it. There are several studies and official reports that confirm that this is a global problem. This has been confirmed to be a global problem. One example, one report is the United Nations report. I think it was 2003, and it said this is quoting directly from that report. It says the problem of juvenile delinquency is becoming more complicated and universal, and crime prevention programs are either unequipped to deal with the present realities or do not exist. The sharpest increase of rates of juvenile violence in most Western European countries occurred in the mid 80s and early 1990s. And so this is spread worldwide, but the report is highlighting what's happening and in Europe. And it says in some countries, the official figures has risen between 50 and 100%. You have doubling of the effect. For example, in England and Wales, for example, approximately 360 of every 100,000 youth between the age of 14 and 16 years old were convicted or cautioned by the police for violent crimes. But that is in 1986. But in 1994, that figure was increased to 580 per 100,000. That is almost doubled. The same we see in Western Germany. In 1984, it was somewhere around 300, and then in 1995, it became 760, more than double. So this is an increasing, growing problem. Now, this report is only a snapshot of the state of affairs of young people in our modern world. And it is a growing problem, and I'm sure that many parents listening today would recognize what I'm talking about firsthand. And at the heart of this problem is an idea that has become attached to the concept of reason, an idea that is rooted in the 18th century Enlightenment period. The Enlightenment was a raft of intellectual and philosophical ideas around the importance of reason. And this emerged from a rebellion against authority, especially in the personal reasoning over what is right and wrong. And these ideas were useful in challenging superstition and in challenging the two major tyrannies of the time, the tyranny of the monarchies and the tyranny of the clergy, that restricted discussion on scientific inquiry. Now, in order to break free from the strictures placed on scientific inquiry by the clergy and this movement of rebellion against superstition and the ruling institutions emerged in the form of this thing called the Enlightenment. And I'm sorry I have to go into these details, but to comprehend the problem, it is necessary Because in order, if you're going to deal with this with your children, you need to speak from a position of knowledge. Now, this Enlightenment movement is often referred to as the age of reason, and it gave the world a multitude of revolutions, political revolutions, scientific revolutions, and also cultural revolutions, and brought a lot of good to the world as well. But as we know, Shaitan does not ever give up. And when there's a change occurring, he looks for an opening and an opportunity to snare, to set his trap, to trap the minds of people through embedding self-destructive notions within the philosophy of the movement. And this is what he did. Immanuel Kant was perhaps one of his representative, I don't know, but perhaps he described he was one of the most prominent Enlightenment philosophers of the time. And he described this movement, the Enlightenment. He says, this is what he says. He says that the emergence of man from his self-imposed infancy. So people are, in general, are regarded as being in infancy, as being children. Infancy is the ability, this is what he says. He says, infancy is the ability to use one's reasoning without a guidance of another, without the guidance of another. It is self-imposed. When it depends on a deficiency, not reason, but of a resolve and a courage to use it without external guidance. So that's infancy. If you use reason with external guidance, then that is somehow infancy. The key idea of reasoning without external guidance, without the clergy and the monarchy, was then widened and taken to the extreme. And this is where Shaitan comes in. Not only the clergy and the monarchy, but all forms of external influence must be resisted, irrespective of who or where it comes from, irrespective of the origin. Now, this idea persisted through the centuries and remained highly salient. It's a very popular idea in modern consciousness. Children are schooled in this idea and are gradually cultured into believing that reason requires, in order to be reasonable, in order to think reasonably, it requires complete independence from all external authority, all external influence whatsoever. And that is the problem. Where naturally no one would have a problem with the value of reason, they must now become convinced that in order to think reasonably, they must see all forms of authority in their own sphere of influence as pollutants, as corrupting and impeding. And therefore, in order to achieve genuine reason, one must reject all external influences. In other words, reason is impossible with any external influence because all influence are suspect. And this is the problem, that you create this idea that anything that comes from someone else should be treated as suspicious. And there's a mantra, that children are taught in school, and they say, to be able to use your reasoning, you must not allow others to influence you. This is the mantra that's repeated by teachers and mentors in school. Now, once this perspective on reason becomes embedded in the child's mind, that I will not be acting with reason if I allow anyone to influence me, then a clash with their first sphere of influence. What's the child's first sphere of influence? The parents, of course. Parents are one of the first structures of authority that becomes victim of this idea, this trick of Shaitan, this snare, this rein. And once it takes hold, usually around early adolescence, then it is followed by a cascade of relationship breakdowns. You get one after the other. As children develop and try to determine the reasonableness of their growing beliefs and convictions and inhibitions, then and to check to see if they are consistent with that of their parents. Anything that is consistent, anything that seems similar to that of their parents is automatically classed as suspect, because parents are an external authority, and that is actively promoted by the teachers and the people in their spheres. That look, what you see, for example, in religious classes, in religious education classes, I found out this: the teachers are asking students in school to make lists of 2 lists, and they present children with two lists of celebrities, and then they will say to them, and this I found that this was happening in a Muslim in a school in East London where the vast majority of the students were Muslims, and in the religious education class, they prevent children from taking their notebooks home. But in that class, they were telling the children that they would present them with two lists of celebrities and their parents. And in one list, they would show that these celebrities follow the religion of their parents, and in the other list, these are celebrities that did not follow the religion of their parents. And then they ask you that exercise your reason and make a decision. Now, what will you follow? Are you following your parents, or will you follow your reason? So that's the type of brainwashing, the type of culturing in this idea of reason being the thought process that follows in the mind of the child, is that those are the moral positions and the belief of my parents, who are from a different era, an old backward era. They are not mine, and therefore I need to find my own ideas and my own moral judgments independent from influence from my parents. Then only will I have made a genuine and reasonable choice. So effectively, the main criteria for the validity of good reasoning becomes what? Becomes opposition to all parental reasoning, good or bad. In other words, they then begin to feel that without getting rid of or jettisoning all thoughts and belief and influence in the mind that might have come from parents, then you cannot become reasonable in your own mind unless you do that, unless you abandon it. And as one young man said to me, I cannot listen to my father anymore. I cannot. This is what he said to me. He said, even if he is right. And I asked, well, so why is that? He said, because that would not be me. Even if my father is right, I cannot take what he's saying, because that would not be me. And if it's not me, I have to find my own opinion. Only then it would be right for me. I will decide what is right and wrong. And this is what's happening. Children are taking it upon themselves. And what this means for the child is now that the most important test for whatever is reasonable, whatever they must do, must not have any form of external influence, even if that external influence is the parents. Children then become convinced that they cannot show any deference, any respect to the ideas of their parents, because that would make them unreasonable. As for schools, what's happening in schools is the children do accept influence from the authority of the teacher in the classroom, but that is only as far as the subject matter is being taught, as far as the subject matter being taught. Even that is limited, because it's detached, it's limited only and linked to passing the exams at the end of the year. But beyond the classroom, all moral judgments about what is right and wrong is perceived solely to be their own independent domain. And of course, one of the consequences of this privatized morality is a dramatic change in attitudes towards intimate relations, towards willingness to experiment with drugs, and all the other problems we're seeing. While children lose respect for parental guidance, they're left morally rudderless and uninhibited from the feeling of any sense of restraint or shame in acting out their own fantasies and desires, however inappropriate it may seem to their elders. They do no longer care, because they have this reassuring thought in the back of their mind that somehow what I'm doing is reasonable. Now, when children embrace this idea that all their moral judgments must be independent of external guidance, they then start to indulge in transient thinking, in finding faults with everything anyone says. Even when something is clearly in their own interest to agree with it, they will disagree for the sake of disagreeing. They will become contrarians, dismissing all and seeing themselves as the only authority in the world. Now, the link between this and the casualty of respect. When you internalize this idea of all external influences are suspect, that must be repelled, then the next casualty is your ability to show respect to anyone. Respect then follows. Because to dismiss what one's parents is saying, one must first abandon respect for the parents. The two go hand in hand. Respect and recognition and acceptance. Now remember the hadith that I read earlier, لَيْسَ مِنَّا مَنْ لَمْ يَرْحَمْ صَغِيرًا وَيَعْرِفْ شَرَفَ كَبِيرًا. That you will not be among a follower of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You will not be among this ummah if you do not, on one hand, practice compassion, but you should recognize the honor of the elder. Compassion and respect in Islam go hand in hand. If you lose respect for the authority, for the first authority in your life, which is your parents, then you are likely to lose respect for other forms of authority, which is something new in the world, of course. Before this problem, in most cultures, respect for elders in authority, respect for those that are older than you is something universal. But today, the situation is so bad that the kind of advice that you used to give little children is now given to adult congregations. Where the elderly are not honored, there is no future for the young. If we do not learn to look after and respect our elderly, we will be treated in the same way. The quality of society, I mean, civilization is also judged by how it treats the elderly and by the place it gives them in community. This is the Pope. This is the Pope speaking not to children, but to a congregation of 12,000. There is an obvious reason why he feels the need to say this. There is a growing decline in the value and the respect for elders in our world today, and which has been brought more into sharp focus now in the current COVID crisis, where the elderly is treated in some quarters as expendable. Now, Muslims are not immune to this problem. Yes, it may not be as widespread, but our children are taking these ideas on board, and it is leading to friction and conflict between parents and children, and then eventually a drift from Islam. The drift rate, as I said, is 25%. That is 1 in 4. This is an alarming rate of drift. If as parents we do not make a serious effort to understand the mechanics of this drift and find solutions to it, to dealing with it, to inoculating our children from it, then this will turn out to be a massive crisis for our community. Now, how do we inoculate our children from this disease? What do we do? The first thing you have to focus on, we need to do, is to encourage our children, speak to our children, have conversations with our children from a very young age, to show overt respect. Because in our world today, there's a problem with respect. We need visible respect. When I say overt, I mean respect that you can view, that you can visibly see. Because nowadays, even the word respect has become so vague that we no longer know what it means. Because if you ask a young person if they respect someone else, they will quickly say, yes, I respect him. But if you ask what does that mean, they will not know how to explain it, or they might give you some slang meaning. They might describe the word, yeah man, respect type, which means respect, which means something along the lines that I'm amazed with you, or I like you. But there's definitely a need for our children to have a clear view of what respect looks like, and they need to learn what does respect look like when you learn to act respectfully. Then you will feel it in your heart, because there are lots of people nowadays who are quick to say, oh, I do respect you, while indulging in the most disrespectful behavior. So respect is not only something that resides in the heart, disconnected from your behavior. If you have indeed genuine respect in your heart, then it should show in your behavior. And that is what we need to focus our children towards, that you should show the respect. Imam Ghazali talks about this in his Ihya. He says that the relationship, in relation to young people, he said, once you become an age of discernment, once they become young people, then they should وَيُحْسِنَ الْإِسْتِمَاعَ مَهْمَا تَكَلَّمَ غَيْرُهُ مِمَّنْ هُوَ أَكْبَرُ مِنْهُ سِنًّا. That a young person should be taught to listen attentively, to take from people, to listen when someone who is older than them speaks. أن يحسن الاستماع مهما تكلم غيره مما هو أكبر سنا منه مما هو أكبر منه سنا. That he should take from people, listen attentively, listen properly, take from someone who is elder than them, and ويقوم لمن فوقه ويوسع له المكان ويجلس بين يديه, that he should stand in respect for those above them and make space for them and sit facing them. This is what respect looks like. We need to have we need to see it. Respect for the elderly is not optional. It is a right in Islam. It is a haqq. It is something that young people has to understand, that they owe that to older people. It is not a charity. This hadith that I read comes in three different versions, and in one version it says laysa minna man lam yarham saghirana, that you are not from among us if you do not show mercy to the young, wa ya'rif haqqa kabirina, and if you do not know, if you do not acknowledge the right of those who are older than you, of the elders. If you do not accept the right of elders, the right, haq, this is a realm. And in the third report, it uses the word tawqir, which is waqqara yuwaqqiru. He says, laysa minna man lam yarham saghirana, you are not from among us if you do not show mercy, kindness, affection, love to young people. Wa yuwaqqir kabirana, and to show reverence. Waqqara means to akramahu wa a'zamahu wa bajjalahu. It means to show deep reverence in your heart, on your tongue, in your actions towards people that are older than you, having reverence in the heart. So to know what respect looks like, not this fangled idea in the mind, newfangled idea. Now, the second thing we need to do is to warn our children as early as possible about the dangers of falling prey to this particular trick of shaitan. We have to explain it to them in simple as words that we can, but make it known. Give them the ability to recognize the trick about the reason not possible without guidance from others. We have to explain to them that it's perfectly reasonable to take the help and guidance from others who are more experienced than you. In other words, those who are older and more knowledgeable are far more likely to have experience that will be able to help you. Therefore, it is entirely reasonable to accept advice and guidance from them, and not taking advice is the unreasonable thing to do. Now, another thing that children must be taught is in regard to recognizing the genetic fallacy in this. The genetic fallacy, the fallacy that something is wrong simply because of its origin, to dismiss something not because it is wrong or right, but because of who is saying it. This is known as the genetic fallacy. If you say to someone, did you hear the news report? What the news reporter said about the president, and the reply from his supporter will be, well, it's all fake news. The media, you know what the media is like. Instead of asking what has been said and judge the content of the report, no, it's dismissed. This is an attitude that can be cultivated into habit. It becomes a habit, and then people begin to dismiss information solely on the basis of its origin, and this is known as the genetic fallacy. So you explain to them what is the genetic fallacy, and if they become affected by the historic aspects of this way of thinking, then we should also be able to say that, look, see, that Islam, that there are some people who try to make this argument that Islam is backward and against reason, and then as parents, you should be able to explain that reason is highly valued in Islam, and that many of the Enlightenment thinkers, the people who are supposed to have brought in this age of reason, they were influenced by Muslim scholars. There were Muslim scholars that influenced this, but they did not influence it with that shaitan that shaitan trick embedded in it. There were people like Ibn Sina and Ibn Rushd, despite all the controversies of whatever you might think about these scholars, they were people who memorized Quran. Ibn Rushd was very keen on children being taught to respect their parents and have good conduct. In fact, he wrote about children that the kind of poems they should learn the content of it should be al-hathu ala birri al-walidain wa istina' al-ma'ruf, that whatever poem they should learn, it should have encouragement towards being kind, being obedient and loving towards parents, and doing good. So this is not only the way of these people, but it is the way of the Sahaba. It goes all the way back. They knew what respect looked like and what it was not. And that is whenever they saw disrespect and the potential for disrespect, they made a point of warning about it. This is how they noticed it, they saw it, and then they would point it out. They would take it up, they would identify it and address it straight away. Once Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu was walking, and this is a hadith, and Abu Hurairah absara rajulaini, that he saw two grown men. This was not a child and a man. He said rajulaini. Rajul is a man. So he said, رجلين أبصر رجلين فقال لأحدهما. So he said to one of them, he said to one of these two people, ما هذا منك? That what's the relationship between the two of you, for this person to you? فقال أبي. So he said, he is my father. He said, oh, he's your father. فقال. So then he said to him, لا تسميه باسمه. Do not call him by his name. You have to use words of respect and reverence to your father. You do not call them by their name. ولا تمشي أمامه, and do not walk in front of him. ولا تجلس قبله, and do not sit before him. Do not sit before him. This is what respect looks like. If you practice it, you have to know. If you have respect in your heart, that it will come out. Abu Hurairah didn't say that without a reason. Obviously, he saw something that made him pull that boy, pull that parent, pull that boy into the practice that he was taught. They got this from the Sahaba. The Sahaba did this because they were taught by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that respect and kindness to parents was the second most valuable deed in life after prayer, after salah. Someone asked Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, سألت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أي العمل أحب إلى الله تعالى أحب إلى الله عز وجل. That which action is more dear, is more beloved to Allah? And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, الصلاة على وقتها, that prayer on its time. قلت ثم أي, and then I said, after that which? قال ثم بر الوالدين. After that he said, then kindness to parents. In order to understand what respect is, they need to know what respect looks like. It is not some antiquated, old-fangled idea that you keep only in your heart, like the person who goes to work every day and does nothing, does not follow the instructions of their manager, and then when questioned, their only defense is that I have love and respect I have love for the company, and I have respect for you in my heart. The response to that will be that if you love and respect this company, and if you love and respect me, then you should follow what I say. It should show in your actions. We do not accept this kind of talk, this kind of explanation of respect detached from behavior in other aspects of our life. We do not accept it, so why should we accept it in the relation between parents and children? In Islam, the love and respect has to be so deeply rooted in the heart that even after the death of the parent, it continues to influence your behavior. I'm going to repeat this. In Islam, the love and respect has to be so deeply rooted in the heart that even after the death of the parent, it continues, that respect continues to influence your behavior, not only in praying and giving charity, giving sadaqah on their behalf, but also in showing overt respect and kindness to those who your parents loved. Once Abu Bakr, Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu was traveling, he was going, he said, this is the hadith, he said that لقي أن عبد الله بن عمر رضي الله عنه أن لقي رجل من الأعراب في طريق مكة في مكة. In the streets of Mecca, he found on the way to Mecca, he found a Bedouin Arab, a man, a Bedouin. فسلم عليه, and he did salam, he greeted him. وحمله على بعير كان يركبه, and then he gave him على حمار كان يركبه. He gave him his donkey to ride. وأعطاه عمامته, and then he gave him his own head cover, his headgear, he gave him that too. فقال ابن دينار, and then فقلنا له, he said, and then his companion said to him, أصلحك الله, may Allah rectify you, may Allah, these are Bedouins, why they are satisfied. He said, inna about that these people أصلحك الله وهم يرضون اليسير هم إنهم الأعراب وهم يرضون اليسير, that these are Bedouins and they are happy, they become satisfied with much less than that. Why did you give him so much? What did Abdullah ibn Umar said about that? He said, إن أبا هذا كان ودا لعمر بن الخطاب, that the father of this person was beloved to my father, to Umar ibn al-Khattab, to my father. Now look at the distance, look at the way. It's not the person who his father loved, but the son of the father. Aba hada, the father of this person, was Umar ibn al-Khattab. Wa inni, and I heard Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is now, he's explaining his actions. He's saying, إني إني سمعت رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يقول إن أبر البر صلة الرجل أهل ود أبي. That the finest and the best form of good deeds is the good treatment of someone whom your father loved, who your father used to love, your parents, the love. This is what respect looks like. Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi assigned a whole chapter in his book, the Al-Adab al-Mufrad, with the title, Love is Inherited. Al-Wuddu yatawarath. And this is the inheritance of the love, that your father did this, loved these people, so I did. This is showing respect. You're supposed to inherit the love for people your parents used to love. The respect should continue. But today, forget about that, or forget about who your parents love. The parents themselves are treated with disrespect and are being willfully ignored just to prove this point, just to make sure that they're not being influenced, and because it goes against this new idea of what is reasonable, which is, of course, the trap of shaitan. It is the ring in the nose and the rain on the mouth. As Muslims, we must not allow this kind of thinking to seep into our minds and into the minds of our children. We need to warn them to watch out for it. We need to delineate it, speak about it, and warn them, give them the tools to recognize it, to recognize the scheme. That look, inna shaitana wa la tattabi'u khutuwati shaitan. Do not follow the schemes of shaitan. And the more good advice you have, the better you will be able to make sound and reasonable judgment. That is what that our children needs to learn. Abandoning the advice of those who love you unconditionally, is not a reasonable thing to do. And that they need to understand. Growing up and becoming knowledgeable should not increase your sense, should not decrease your sense of respect. And that's what usually happens here. Our children go to school and learn 2 words of English, and then come home and feel that and look at the parents as if they are completely ignorant and they know nothing. Imam Abu Hanifa rahmatullah alayhi was the most knowledgeable of his time. He was so knowledgeable. Imam Shafi'i says that an-nasu عيال في الفقه على أبي حنيفة. That the rest of the Muslims are all the people of other than the scholars are all children in front of Abu Hanifa. This is his status in fiqh. He was such a great scholar. Everyone knew him, but he did not. When at home, he was completely different with his parent, with his mother, and this has been recorded, that his relationship with his mother. As they say in Urdu, "Gar ki murgi dal barabar," that a dinner from the chicken that's grown at home is similar to eating dal, because there's no value of it. But at home, you're just you. You're not. So his mother did not. She would send him to an older scholar to ask fatwa, even though he had become the greatest sheikh, the greatest faqih of the land. She would tell him to go and ask for a fatwa, for find something out, to go to an older scholar, and he would go. He didn't say to her, "Oh well, now I'm more knowledgeable. Why don't you ask me?" He would go to the scholar. He went to Abu Zar al-Hamadani. He would go and he said, and he would say, he says that Inna ummi amaratni an as'aluka kada wa kada, that my mother has ordered me to ask you so and so. And the sheikh would say to him, "Oh, misluka yas'aluni an hada," that would someone your status ask such a question? فأقول, and he said, "Hiya amaratni." It is the command of my mother. My mother has asked me to do it, so I've come to ask you. And then the sheikh would say to him, فيقول كيف هو الجواب حتى أخبرك. Tell me the answer to the question you're asking, so that I may repeat it to you. So he would tell the sheikh what the answer is. فأخبره بالجواب ثم يخبرني. That I tell him the answer to the question, and then he repeats it to me. فأتيتها وأخبرها بالجواب. And then he would go back to his mother and say, the sheikh said so and so and so, without telling her the other bits of the conversation, that this is actually my answer. This is the level of the respect. We should know that we should understand, teach our children that having a reason and their intellect and their knowledge will never reach that of the heights of Abu Hanifa, rahmatullah alayhi. So they should not let their respect for their parents be any less than Abu Hanifa. that his knowledge, where he arrived. May Allah give us the tawfiq to follow this and protect ourselves and our children. May Allah protect us and protect our children from this trap and grant us all the ability to show true respect to our parents, to our elders, and to all those deserving of respect. O Allah, put respect in the behavior of our children, put respect on their tongues and respect in their hearts, genuine respect in their hearts. O Allah, bring the hearts of our parents and children closer together in love and affection for one another. Fill our hearts with love for you and love for all that is beloved to you. اللهم إنا نسألك حبك وحب من يحبك والعمل الذي يبلغنا حبك يا رب يا كريم. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك يا رب يا كريم. اللهم أعنا على ذكرك وشكرك وحسن عبادتك. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات والمسلمين والمسلمات وألف بين قلوبهم وأصلح ذات بينهم وانصرهم على عدوك وعدوهم. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته ولا هما إلا فرجته ولا كربا إلا نفسته ولا ميتا إلا رحمته ولا مريضا إلا شفيته ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة هي لك رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا أعنتنا على قضائها ويسرتها يا رب يا كريم يا رب العالمين. اللهم وفرج هم المهمومين ونفس كرب المكروبين واقض الدين عن المدينين واشف جميع مرضى المسلمين واشف جميع مرضى المسلمين يا رب يا كريم. اللهم انصر من نصر دين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. اللهم انصر إخواننا في مشارق الأرض ومغاربها يا رب يا كريم. رحماك في أطفالنا، رحماك في شبابنا، رحماك في أمهاتنا يا رب يا كريم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. وصل اللهم على رسوله النبي الكريم وسلم تسليما كثيرا وعلى آله وأصحابه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. آمين آمين يا رب يا كريم. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.